Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Monday night Derek's chat show. Tonight, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, neuro-linguistic programming, and all the soft skills that make a massive difference. The soft skills that make the difference, that makes the difference. There's interesting statistics I picked up this morning. 90% of high performers have high emotional intelligence. 58% of emotional intelligence is responsible for job performance. And even more key, this is an American survey, $29,000 is what people with higher emotional intelligence earn than with people with lower emotional intelligence. And what do we mean by emotional intelligence? We mean, and Gabby will explain this in more depth than me, we mean picking up the signals, picking up the vibes, picking up what people are saying, picking up what the body language is saying, but also knowing your own emotional intelligence, understanding how your body feels. And whenever I go to Alison, she says, well, how does the body feel about this? I said, it kind of feels okay, really. Well, you're probably all right then. Get it out of your head. And more from Alison in a minute. I was taken by the quote from Paul McKenna. And Paul McKenna said, most people know how to operate their DVD or computer, if you like, now better than they know how to work their own brain operating system, how the brain works, why if you write down questions overnight you tend to get the answer in the morning, why you need to keep a pad by your bed. So today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, how the brain works, body language, mirroring with body language, managing your own state, and positive language. And if we don't get through all that, we'll do another session in a week or two's time. But when I started teaching negotiations and doing some negotiations in Barclays, I noticed people's body language in meetings. And I was also surprised that people that were in the meeting with me didn't notice it. And I'm thinking, well, it was there. Why didn't you look? And they were so bothered about the numbers, the spreadsheets, and everything else. They weren't looking, they weren't watching. They were watching people's reactions when they said something or did something or even rubbed their nose as they were trying to convince us. So emotional intelligence is picking up all the signals. And Gabby, if you're there and you're able to put a little bit more meat on my very one-line explanation, that would be fantastic.
I've got a lovely definition of emotional intelligence. It's the capacity for recognizing your own feelings and also those of others. It's also understanding how you motivate yourself and manage your own emotions, and how you are able to work around relationships and improve relationships with other people, which is probably why $29,000 more from your survey is the reality. Because if you get on with people and you can help people be the best that they can be and produce the more for the business, then actually the business will improve and do better.
Absolutely. And if you remember that statistic I've told several times about at Henley Management College, Henley Business School, where I taught negotiations for 12 years, they did a survey that said people with higher emotional intelligence, negotiation skills, interview skills earn 100% more than people who had lower skills. And when I'm helping a client negotiate, the things I'm looking for is the little signals, the little bits of information that give you the real truth and where they are really coming from. So I want to talk about the brain for a minute, and the brain looks roughly like that. So there's two halves of the brain, and that's the left side of the brain, and that's the right side of the brain. And Dr. Roger Sperry in 1981 won the Nobel Prize for Medicine for splitting the corpus callosum, the wiring that goes between the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. Now, the neuroscientists like Linda Shaw will tell you that things have moved on so much that that's not totally correct as a neuroscience, but it's a fabulous metaphor, and I talk about it in win-win for saying the left-hand side of the brain, which is the powerful side of the brain when you're doing logical, accounting, numbers, reading and writing, tends to take over. The right side of the brain works the emotions, reading the body language, intuition, seeing the big picture, and funnily enough, colours as well. So if you go to a negotiation on your own, under all that pressure, how are you going to read the emotional intelligence if you're looking at the spreadsheets of the deal and how much you're going to save or how much you're going to make or what the deal is? You need someone with you like Gabby or Alison, strong on emotional intelligence, reading the signals, picking up the body language. So when you take a break and you take a time out, you can ask them, what did you see? How did it feel? What's your gut feel? Gut feel is very important, another right brain skill. And what's your view? How much do we need to come down? How much do we need to add in? Do you think we can close the deal now, or should we give them payment terms, or whatever the issue is? So high emotional intelligence is critical for good salespeople, good influencers, good leaders, and good negotiators. Of course, my favorite subject. And in negotiation, remember, reading body language, intuition, gut feel is a right brain skill. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the left brain takes over the more tired you get. That's why you get these flashes of inspiration when you're on the train going home. You wake at 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock, keep a notepad by your bed. If you wake up with a great idea, don't forget to write it down, because those ideas tend to disappear. Well, they do disappear in about 10 seconds. Gabby, have you got anything to add to that before I move on to unconscious and conscious mind within the brain?
So very quickly, what has been discovered is back in the day when they realised that the brain was in two halves connected by the corpus callosum, they were doing all of these tests on men that had come back from the war, dead. And in newer times, in more recent times, obviously things have moved on. And what they've realised is that the corpus callosum in women generally, and it is a generalisation, is thicker. So actually, this idea that women are more intuitive or women are able to multitask is to do with the physicality of how the brain is put together. So when gentlemen generally are very good at compartmentalizing their lives, which I know we've talked about in the past, for women, if they've got a problem on the one part of their life, it can feel like they've got the problem in the whole of their life. If they're excited about one part of their life, they can feel excited about the whole of their life. And it's to do with the actual physical makeup of the brain, which I find really, really fascinating. And it also shows why we have so many different intelligences, because we were talking about, we've talked about emotional intelligence, but actually there are multiple intelligences that we have that are affecting each and every one of you on a daily basis. Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of the name of the author that wrote the book called The Seven Intelligences.
Howard Gardner.
Howard Gardner, that was it, on the tip of my tongue. Let's talk about the more exciting unconscious and conscious mind. Now, I remember that the conscious mind can only hold 7 plus or minus 2 things, but the unconscious mind's infinite. Remember, it stores every memory, everything that's ever happened to us in our lives, which is why, again, when you can't recall something, whatever you do, don't say I've got a bad memory, or don't say I can't remember things, because what you're doing is you're embedding that into your mind and you'll never remember things. Say, I can't remember that at the moment, but I will in an hour's time. I'll write myself a note, where are my keys? And they'll turn up. Now, believe me, this works. I used to say I had a bad memory. So I went on my NLP course and I realized that was a crazy thing to do, because everything's stored up here, but it's just the recall that's really important. So when you're tired, the recall's not so easy. So when you go to bed, write yourself a question. What am I going to talk about on this big course I've got tomorrow, or whatever it is? What's missing? That's the sort of thing I would do, because I'd have mind mapped it the night before. Gabby, you've got much more experience than me on that. Over to you.
So it's around embedding suggestions, and I'm sure Alison's got a take on it as well. But embedding suggestions, we've got society, we've got media embedding suggestions in us all of the time. Any of you that are parents or grandparents, you are embedding suggestions into those around you, and young minds just absorb absolutely everything. So your brains have got memories from when you were first born, when you were being pushed in a pram. It's the recall of those memories that can consciously be quite difficult for many, but unconsciously it's all there. So what we find is that people have a set type of behavior and they don't necessarily understand why. And it will very often come from the unconscious that was fed into them from a very, very young age. So embedded suggestions are really, really important. So the one that I'm constantly nagging dear Derek with is, rather than don't forget, it's make sure you remember.
And actually, guys, when I write I have to write my briefing, I have to change a few things around, etc., because we naturally come out of that. Ali, it's great to have you with us today. I know that you're now working with patients under PPE, ridiculous circumstances. Great to see you. Have you got anything to add to what Gabby said there?
Yeah, so exactly. So the way Gabby is saying that these things are embedded and they necessarily behave in ways that we don't realise because of this, you can change that. You can also, if you want to do something, let's take it in my world, perhaps you want to perform a sport that you don't think that you can do very well. If you every day tell yourself you can do that sport and imagine it happening in your mind, eventually you'll go on that tennis court, that golf course, and you'll do that amazing shot. And that's all about the plasticity in the brain. You're training it with lots of good ways of what you want it to do, and when the time comes, eventually it just does it, and it really works. You can use that for anything. You can use that for, you were talking about meetings and things. You want to go into that meeting looking confident even if you don't feel it. So if you make your body look confident, your mind will become more confident, and you'll project that confidence forward, which the people you're dealing with will, respond to in a good way. So yeah, it's all about making sure that you get the right thoughts in your mind and repeat them, and it works.
And what's interesting in sport in particular is, if there are any golfers among you, one of the ways to put off the person that you're playing against is to remind them and point out the bunkers ahead, so that they focus their attention on the bunker, which will actually throw their game out slightly. So we are being used, we are having it used on us, and we are using it on other people all the time. But is it done consciously or is it done unconsciously?
The way I used to do that when I played golf, it was one of the reasons I gave up, because people were programming my unconscious mind as well. I'd say, you'd obviously say, don't go in the bunker, which is an instruction to go in the bunker straight away. And then the second one is, wow, that's a big bunker out there, isn't it? Which is a little bit more subtle, but I like playing team sports rather than gamesmanship, going around a golf course. So that sort of thing hacked me off. I think I knew too much about the way the brain worked at that point. Anyway, Alison, also, I know that you get people coming into you thinking they've got something wrong with them actually, but sometimes you can't find anything, and you give them reassurance that they're okay. That's the brain worrying again, isn't it?
Yeah, that's often people have decided they've got an injury and it must be a terrible injury, and they've embedded that thought into themselves. I mean, there are some people who don't get better until they've had an MRI scan, which shows there is absolutely nothing wrong with them. So they've had the scan says there's nothing wrong. The next day you call them, oh yeah, I'm feeling great. And there's no difference between what they were doing physically or what was happening. Just the thing is, the scan came, it's all normal, so they're fine. So a lot of my work is about helping people realize how their mind influences what's happening to them. And it makes a very big difference. But the other thing I was going to mention, you said about in meetings, watching people. I can usually tell more about people in the first 30 seconds when they walk through my door than I can with the 10 minutes of questions, because I just know what signals to look for. And their bodies will be telling me something their mind doesn't know. And it's just observing is so good. So watch people and you'll learn.
Fantastic. No, thanks for that. Alison, and thanks for that, Gabby. And there's a lot to learn there. We could stop there and discuss that, but we've got a few more things on the agenda that that I want to raise, and we can come back to it. Any questions in the chat box, please. Body language. Why is body language so important? I wrote this tips booklet a long time ago. I can't tell you how long. If you want a copy of it, PDF, send me an email and talk. Just say what it is. But that's Lauren, who we hired, an actress, to do some body language for us. And if you look at Fake It Till You Make It by on the web, I've just forgotten the name of the woman that did it. Gabby will remind me in a minute. That body language gives you confidence. It increases the testosterone in your brain if you do it for a couple of minutes, and decreases the cortisol. Amy Cuddy, that's her name, Amy Cuddy. The brain would work. I programmed my brain to find that in 5 seconds, and it absolutely worked. But the issue with body language is it's 5 times more difficult to lie with body language, they say, but trust it. If you're in a meeting, you need to pick up the emotional intelligence. You need to pick up the signals. Most of those signals come through body language, the way they say things, or the words that people use, like we were just talking about, don't go in the bunker or whatever, or I mustn't go in the bunker. You hear people say that, and you can watch them just play the shot, the shank straight into the bunker, because they program their brain to go into the bunker. But reading the body language, and I'll do a session on body language, but if I was giving you just 2 or 3 tips on body language, beware of anyone that tells you something's definite and they rub their nose. Beware of anyone that moves back as they're trying to convince you, or with their arms folded. Beware of anyone that does this when they're trying to persuade you of something, because virtually everywhere around the world that means you're praying for divine intervention. And beware of anybody that does that, which is called steepling, which is a very confident gesture. Now, they might be playing games with you because they know that you're good at reading body language, but you've got to figure that out for yourself. But let me tell you, most people, most of the time, don't pick up the body language signals. So that kind of moves us onto mirroring and matching, which Gabby's more of an expert than me. But if you're selling or influencing, you get a huge advantage if you get into the other person's world and you mirror and match their body language, their voice tonality, and the words that they use. So the speed, and this all comes from a famous psychotherapist called Milton Erickson. But I'll hand over to you, Gabby, now, because you know a lot more about this than I do.
Well, matching and mirroring is a great way to build rapport and empathy with other people. And there is, you know, the copying exactly can be very, very off-putting. So the more subtle you are, the better. So there's something around cross matching and mirroring. So, for example, as I look at my screen, Harry's head is like so, Mary's head is like so, you know, Michael, Gregor, Mark, very similar. So just the slight movement of the head, Tony's, you know, I've got more of the top of his head. So just
I'm concentrating hard by the look of it. I'm going to go into Tony's body language. Kill me for this. He's a great friend of mine.
Just gently moving your head can make a big difference, so that you are kind of not necessarily the same angle. You could be the opposite angle, but the same tilt can make a huge difference. And again, I know we've talked about this before. Another one is breathing, or Jill mentioned in the last one, the cross matching. So if they've got their arms crossed, you might want to cross your legs. And it's moving in sync with them until such a time as you can then test it and you make a move and notice when they move with you, then actually you're in rapport, and then it's more easy to lead them in the direction that you want to take them.
And that's called pacing and leading, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
And it was Milton Erickson that came up, well, they studied, Bandler and Grindler studied Milton Erickson for their first works on neuro-linguistic programming, didn't they? And they found
so the thing about the thing about Milton, the Milton model, so what Milton became very famous, or it was well known for, based around the work that Bandler and Grindler did, was the listener filling in deletions in a statement. So what Milton would do is he would leave lots of gaps, and the only way you could understand what he was saying is to use your own experiences in order to make sense of what he was saying, which is what took him into, took the patients, as they would have been in those days, into trance and to be hypnotized.
Absolutely.
So fascinating.
Absolutely. And if we take this forward, don't forget, this is why this is, don't forget, that's a bad one. Remember that sports psychology and sports psychologists have only just in the last 25 years got heavily employed by top rugby, football, golf, and they're saying, aren't they, they're helping someone who takes a penalty, let's say in football, not to be influenced by the other player that walks by and says, make sure you don't miss this one, with the emphasis on miss this, etc. And you can see it every time you go to and the golfers again are programmed on all sorts of things. So usually they'll have their own sports psychologist. Certainly Arsenal had 3 sports psychologists, which I wasn't allowed to share with anyone. And Thierry Henry was round one of their homes one day, and someone told a friend of mine that she saw Thierry Henry kicking a ball about with in the back garden of a semi-detached house in Barnet. And Thierry Henry and everybody denied it totally because this guy was a sports psychologist. Okay, mirroring the language, mirroring the words, mirroring the tone of voice, and cross mirroring. Huge subject. We spent 2 days on it on my NLP course when Gabby was one of the coaches. I want to turn to state now, state of mind, because state of mind is absolutely crucial to this. And can you imagine the state of mind of some people that have been locked in high-rise blocks of flats for 12 weeks? They're furloughed. They don't know where they're coming from. And guess what? They haven't done any personal development. They haven't done any learning. They haven't watched any YouTube clips. And they're going to come out of this and they're going to have a nasty surprise. But actually, when you go into a negotiation, a sale, you need to be in the right state of mind, the right frame of mind, the right mood. You need to be up for it, and you need to set yourself up with that however you want to do it. And there's all sorts of ways you can do it, and music is a great trigger and an anchor to play in your car or on your MP3 player or on your phone, whatever we do these days. So picking your music is really important. And Kevin talked about his music that he plays to get him into that right state of mind. And state of mind is linked to language. Make sure your language is positive and not negative. And Gabby, you're doing something for a friend of mine who's the chief executive of a charity shortly on the imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome, which we will talk about on another web chat show, is to do with getting these negative jips when you wake up in the morning. I don't justify this. I was born in a council house. My mum and dad are split up. I'll never do this. And this becomes a self-limiting belief. So Gabby, over to you. Can you chip in on that, please?
Oh, I mean, Ali has really talked about that already. And I've got a phrase that a sticker on my computer. It's the word I'm looking for. Oh, words. And it just says, change the way you think about everything and everything about you will change. So it's, you know, what are you saying to yourself? And by way of state, go there first. So if you want to be excited or you want to be happy, you know, the happiness industry is humongous nowadays because everyone is searching out there for happiness. But happiness is, you're born with it. You have a right to it. It is yours, but it's how are you thinking? Are you thinking that you need other things in order to feel happy? Or can you just put a smile on your face, get the physiology, as Ali was saying earlier, and act as though you are happy, and you will be happy. So it's the way that you think about things, the states that you want to get into, just get into them and they will become part of your arsenal for dealing with the world. But it does take discipline.
And you have to be 100% up for it. You have to want to do it. If you go over the park for a run and you're thinking negative thoughts, you're not going to get that out your skin. And as you say, the self-development industry is making a fortune out of people like me, because I couldn't resist seeing if there was one thing in that book which was useful. I didn't think there was, actually, but I didn't throw it away. But it was quite a well-written book by a guy called Andrew Matthews. I don't recommend you buy it. There's better books than that.
One of the things that I get a lot is, yeah, but I just can't get motivated. And this belief that motivation comes before you do things. Now, I can't get motivated to go for a run. Tell you what, go for a run, and after the run, that's when the motivation tends to come. It's go there, you know, do what needs to be done, take the steps, and you will get what you want if you believe that you can.
Because if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're probably right. And Henry Ford said that. So if you can't, just knock the tea off and see what you've got, because success comes in cans. So go and buy yourself a can of beer, open the can of beer, because you might find success in that can. Now people go, oh, those old ones are all the same. Well, they're old, they might be old and somebody else came up with it, but they're good, aren't they? You can remember that, and it creates energy and doing things like that. And you have to put yourself in the right state, because energy is really important. And those of us that do some professional speaking or motivational speaking have to put ourselves in the right state if we're going to create energy to the group of people. And you've got to create energy, because energy is catching. And of course, as we know, negative energy is pretty catching as well. So which is why if you do a whole day of what I do, you're pretty exhausted at the end of it, which is why I need to sit down and have a couple of beers and sort myself out and get in the right frame of mind. Okay, so we've talked, we've overviewed emotional intelligence. We've given you a few tricks on the brain, and in chapter 10 in Win-Win, they're all in there in paragraph format. So don't buy a book. I know you've all bought Win-Win on Amazon, or at least I hope you have. It's all in there. Body language is really important. And don't forget, your own body language will affect your own state. So again, Alison, bringing you in, when you look at this person with their shoulders up, all hunched up, etc. I know it's me sometimes, but don't let on that. You say, drop your shoulders. I mean, in fact, one of your exercises for me, I think, is do that, isn't it? And
yeah, it is one of the simplest things. You just bring your shoulder blades down as if you're putting your shoulder blades down towards your back pockets, and immediately your body opens out and you feel better, and it gives you more energy and you can breathe better. I know I'm always going on about that, but if you actually give a bit of space for your lungs by opening up your shoulders, you can breathe better, concentrate better, and feel better. And it does work. It's so simple.
So how do we do that? You pull it back. How many times you told me that and I've forgotten it?
Just a few. So shoulder blades back and down, as if you're aiming your shoulder blades down for your back pocket. Yeah. And as you do that, so you're like this if you're texting or playing on your iPad. So you just bring shoulder blades back and down towards your back pocket, chest opens out, your neck lengthens, and everything on the top of the body feels better, and you can breathe more. Try it. Try taking a deep breath like this. It doesn't go far. And then you bring yourself up with your shoulder blades back, and now try taking a deep breath. And that breath will go right down into your lungs and bring you more oxygen and more energy. So whenever I'm tired, I do. That's one of my top tips, actually, because if I'm tired, I just take some breath, because I need to project. If I've got a patient in lots of pain who's really worried, I've got to be happy and confident and make them feel better. And just by taking a deep breath and doing that, it just looks that way. Well, that's the way it makes you feel as well.
That makes a massive difference, doesn't it? So if you think about it, all these things are all interlinked, and as the mind and body that they've recently discovered are exactly connected at the same time. By changing your posture, you change your thinking, you change your posture. There's that wonderful Snoopy cartoon that's been around for about 40 years, where Snoopy goes, look, if I want to stay depressed, so I'm going to do depressed body language, and no one's going to stop me, because this makes me feel depressed. Okay, guys, there's a few things in the chat show now and the chat line. So I'm going to have a quick look at that. If there's anything else you want to put in there, and then we'll stop the recording, cover a few other things, and see if anyone's got time for Gabby to explain some trance language. But let me, we may not have time for that. We may have to do that next time, Gabby. That'll be your call. Keith says he's had some very unusual dreams recently about people he knew in his youth. We won't ask him whether they were male or female. Where does the weirdness of dreams fit in? Who's going to, Gabby, are you going to go for that one or not?
Oh my goodness. So I think Jill might have a good take on this. The weirdness of dreams. So just in that statement, there's a judgment around the dreams. Dreams generally are your unconscious mind making sense of what is going on in your world. And it could be that you've been, you know, I was talking earlier about the fact that when we're young, everything gets absorbed by the mind. And it could be that, you know, you went out today, for example. I've just been down to, where was it, Butler's Hard, down by the coast. Never been there before. It was beautiful, and it took me to places that I've been to in France. So I have got no I reckon I will probably have dreams of France, possible holidays when I was younger with my family in the UK. And it's just how the unconscious starts creating sense and making sense of the world. You can see my filing cabinet here. Our brains are filing cabinets, and we keep the information of all of our experiences in our filing cabinets. And when we get to sleep and relax, it's when the mind can start to say, actually, no, the file doesn't belong there, it belongs there. Or, oh, that's interesting, the file from there belongs down there, but it's connected to that one and that one and that one, which is why weirdness can appear in dreams. I hope that's gives you a reasonable answer.
Lots of books on dreaming, isn't there? I always ask myself when I have a dream, what was that all about? What was the learning point from it? And often something comes into my mind, water the plants or something weird. It doesn't really matter, but just asking yourself that. Often you can think of people by noticing someone that looks similar to them, and that's a trigger and an anchor. And I guess the older we get, the more people we've met, so the more triggers will get fired into those anchors. I'm going to keep going on this because we've got some more. Gregor asks, what if a person you are talking with is sending you negative body language signs? Should we mirror him or her? Gabby, I'm going to let you answer that. I could answer it, but you go for it.
I was reading the one above. What is sledging? I've no idea what sledging is.
I'll handle that one.
So what do you do if the person you're talking to is sending you negative body signs? You should mirror him. So this has come up before. There's a judgment around, is it really negative or is it giving you information? I see all body language as giving me information about the mindset of the person. So I don't see it as positive or negative. I see it as information. So I'm guessing that you're talking about, you know, if you've got someone that's there like this being really negative, yeah. So the way that I would mirror is I wouldn't mirror the body language, I would mirror the tone of voice. And this happened to me when I first learnt about this whole matching and mirroring, pacing a lead. I thought it was a load of baloney, honestly. But I'm open-minded, so I thought, rather than be cynical about it, I will test it out. And I remember going to this chap who was a CEO. I was in my 20s, so, you know, little sweet me in my 20s, back in the 80s. So we're talking a long time when women equality was not a thing. And I walked into this office, and the chap was in his big power office, all panelled, with his legs on the table, and he was like this. He's like, come in, sit down, and massive table with this tiny little chair behind it. And I kind of sat down and the desk was up to here on me. And I thought, oh my goodness, this this is never going to work. So he said, so Gabrielle, what is it you're here to sell me? And I thought, okay, I've lost this. So I'm just going to use this as a test case. And I went, well, Gregor, I'm so pleased that you've agreed to meet me. I've got a secret. And I leant forward at that point, bearing in mind the table was there. So I just put my chin. And he went from this, the legs came down and he went, tell me more. And I got him. Now, he never became a client, but he became one of the best advocates and referred me on and recommended me on to so many people. So if I'd taken it as negative rather than information, I might have just gone, oh, yeah, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm very sorry to waste your time, and I would have gone. But I utilised his information, and I went for tone of voice and volume. So there's always something you can match.
Yeah, I was pitching to Marks and Spencer's for Barclays a few years ago, and one of the guys, four accountants, one side of the desk, you know, it's all about price, delivery, credit cards, it was at the time. And he's sitting there like this, and I was new to this NLP, and I thought, well, there's nothing to lose here. I will just match his body language. The lead negotiator was pitching away and giving them all the things, and I just sat there. And when we stopped for a coffee, he came over, and suddenly he was my mate, and he looked the most miserable person of the whole lot. And I went, hey, there's something in this. Hey, Derek, you're onto something. This is gold dust. And I've been using it ever since. But you do have to remind yourself via your conscious mind a few times, otherwise it will disappear into your unconscious mind. And as you know, if you repeat something up to about 21 times, then it goes in and you make more neurons in the brain. The neurons get wider, and you pick up that extra bandwidth. Keith says his daughter ran a laughing at yoga session all around happiness, and everybody was happy. That sounds great. Actually, you see, happiness is infectious, smiling is infectious, laughter is infectious, and being miserable is infectious. So you've got to be careful who you stick around with, because if you stick around with the wrong people, they might be causing some of the issues.
We are human Wi-Fi, and whoever has the strongest signal will get through to the rest.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great one. That's a great one. Ryan's made up his own phrase, which is a bit like one of mine. Pain is in the brain, and right now, my brain isn't feeling any pain. I think Ryan ought to take up some poetry, don't you? I always say to Ali, I said, go on, get your fingers in my back. And she says, doesn't that hurt? I said, yeah, it does a bit, but no pain, no gain. But you don't like that one, Ali, do you?
I don't like that. That's on your negative bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So less pain, more gain.
Yeah. And Will says you're never fully dressed without a smile. And I read somewhere at one stage that smiling takes 14 muscles, and frowning takes 72 muscles, and smiling creates endorphins, that happy drug that we all like, as Richard Badley used to call it, endomorphines. So let's have some endomorphines, etc. Gabby, Ali, have you got anything to add?
I think I'm going to just remind you of my little sticker that I look at on a daily basis. Change the way you think about everything, and everything about you will change.
And I think fitness.
I think I'll just say, remember about sitting up straight and taking a deep breath. See what a difference it makes. And smile. Smile is always, smiling is the best thing. I do it a lot.
Brilliant. Gabby, can we save the trance for next time?
I think so, yes.
I asked Gabby to give us some trance language, which is really interesting, because what trance language does, it muddles your brain up and takes you into the unconscious mind. Gabby's shaking her head. I've obviously got that totally wrong. Well, it does to me anyway. I'm just a small boy from London. But you better explain that better than me before we finish.
So I'm basically, as you're all sitting there, having heard what Ali, Derek and myself have said, you've all had your own experiences. And with those experiences, you're able to now integrate them so that as you go to sleep tonight and dream and sleep and relax and rest, all of this can integrate into your unconscious, so that in the morning when you wake up refreshed and happy with renewed energy, you are able to actually consciously start using some of the information that we have used.
That's a great
Boom.
trance language. Now I'm going to switch the recording off in a minute, but I'm going to answer Alan McCulloch's comment to Gabby. Alan says that's called sledging. Well, sledging is a term that came from cricket, where the bowling side used to whisper in the batsman's ear, "You're going to be out next ball. Oh, yeah, that was a terrible shot." Or just as the bowler was bowling, the wicket keeper, who might have been standing up to the wicket within about 3 foot of him, said, "Oh, you're going to miss that," and so on and so forth. And of course, it can be used in golf, although I don't think golf would do it. They've been trying to ban it because there's been lots of controversy, and also Sky have a microphone in the stumps now, so actually everything can be heard. So and cricket got a bit of a bad reputation, but that's what it's called, putting people off by negative embedded commands. And I think the dog has now signaled it's probably time. Gabby, can I thank you again for this and ask you to come back and join us again. Alison, it's always brilliant to see you, and it's brilliant to hear that you're working hard. I think you should have turned up in your PPE mask. We'd like to have
okay, next time
if you could do that.
You wouldn't be able to read my facial language then.
Exactly.
And I think each one of those subjects we've touched on for about 5 minutes is a day or so on its own, or a book or so on its own. And I'm just fascinated by the whole thing. And as I said at the beginning, people with higher emotional intelligence, or people that increase their emotional intelligence by being more aware of their feelings, other people's feelings, where they're coming from, and the body language, will get better results and will succeed more than people that miss all the signals. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching this on YouTube. If you like it, please like it, put some comments in the box. I'd really appreciate that, and look forward to seeing everybody shortly. Thank you very much.